pressed the button. Oh, crikey. So in theory, we're live. Hello again. Hopefully you can hear me and see me, and hopefully I don't ruin my laptop by running code that was broken. I'm going to do my absolute best not to run broken code on this laptop, but if I have to, I'll run it on the one behind me. That will make no sense to anyone other than anyone who was here last week and witnessed the catastrophe that was my computer. More on that in a minute. So welcome, I'm Alan, and I'm joined, as always, on a Thursday by my wonderful colleagues on the Anchore open source team. That's Alex, Will, Dan, Keith, and Chris. We are the people that bring you such glorious pieces of software like Syft, the SBOM generator, and Grype, the vulnerability detector, and a lot of other stuff as well. And we use this time to go through some issues, roadmap items, pull requests, all that kind of good stuff. If you want to ask questions, feel free. If you want to join us, it's on Thursday. And follow the social accounts for Syft and Grype and you'll find the announcements. It's also linked here on the open source page. I edited that earlier on today. So if you just go to anchor.com/open source, you'll find this link here and you could just go straight to the live stream with that little button there. Nice and easy. So if you want to find out where any of the code is that we're talking about, it's all on GitHub under the Anchor organization. But like any open source tool, we depend on a bunch of other tools and libraries and, foreshadowing. So do we want to dive straight into the first thing, which is this? We put a new version of Grype out. Well done, everyone. Round of applause. Well done. It's a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, no, this was a big one. So this, we released a new schema version V6 for our database. Sounds like it's a fairly small thing, but in actuality, it was a very big overhaul. So 1 through 5, if you blurred your eyes, they were basically the same thing. And we had some technical limitations that kept us from really doing anything more complicated on the V1. And since then, we've kind of been using the same design because it was easy to do, and we really wanted to make certain matching was working as we expected. Since then, the database grew in size a lot. A lot of vulnerability data out in the world has been published. We've added more data sources. So now I think compressed, we're up to like 210 megs, like distributing every day. And I mean, that's a lot for all of our Grype users. It ends up being like 20 to 30 terabytes nightly daily that we're shipping to everybody, bandwidth wise. So it was great to be able to ship this new database schema, which is much more space efficient. So I compressed the database archives 66 megs right now. So much nicer to digest.
I clearly haven't updated my Grype,
yes.
which is perfect because that shows you the size of the database that you were just mentioning. It was like 202
right.
meg or something. And if I have a script that updates all my Anchor stuff so that it just like goes and gets all the latest binaries of everything. So now that I've got the latest Grype, hopefully, if I run Grype DB update, will it... oh, look at that. Much smaller. It's almost like I prepared a demo. So, yeah, that's what you were talking about. Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, voila. So, so that's one thing. But I mean, also now that database schema is much more extensible. And so, for instance, we added Kev and EPSS data sets as part of the kind of stretch goals of that effort. It was much easier to add them. And we're really looking forward to seeing more data sets that we can add in the future that will be easier to do without having to make breaking changes to the schema. So it's a good foundation. So feel good about it.
So we could put more data in there and get it all the way back up to 200 meg again. That'd be perfect.
Yes, exactly.
Super. Anything you or anyone else wanted to talk about before we move on? We've got a couple of items that you've raised. Alex, should we dive into those first?
Yeah, it's actually one item. I have a couple links. I took the oldest Syft PR that was out there that has not been merged, and I said, hey, what would it take to get this across the finish line? So it is adding a GitLab cataloger. So if you check out the issue, that Weston wrote for this, that 1904 there, um, you'll see some examples of what's actually getting cataloged. So in that description, those two little, yeah, there we go, a release file that says, hey, this is like the version of GitLab. And then they have this version manifest for any embedded software that kind of copied it into this embedded directory or elsewhere. Here's something useful that you can use to understand, like, oh, what it is that we're embedding, like where did we get it from, what are the versions, what's the licenses, etc. Really useful information. And we came, so there was a community PR that came in for this one to implement it, which was great. And I really want to help get this one across the finish line. And there were some questions at the bottom of the issue. So Will, you raised up some good questions. And so I've come back and I've tried to answer them. It's at the very bottom of this whole thing, yeah. So for instance, for these file formats, has anything changed? And the answer is no, which is great. There's some good questions about what we want to do for if we're raising up software in this cataloger is about to be added, and also in other pre-existing catalogers, what do we want to do? And I got a little stuck on that one, but I have a kind of a simple bailout proposal for this. So I kind of, there's a small output right there for the diff, just for, so I did a symmetric diff, like what's in this version manifest uniquely, what's in the Syft SBOM uniquely, and what's the same. And so what you're seeing here is the same. And the difficulty here is, and same what you'll see in the version manifest, that there's no type information and there's nothing to really glean that from either. So
where are you?
that means,
Sorry, can you? What do you mean by there's no type? You mean like these, the whether it's a Ruby gem or something else, or right? Okay.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, package type. So like everything on the left there of that where your mouse is just at is, it doesn't say any types, and everything on the right, like from Syft, we know that these are, mostly gems or all gems. So if you go to the very top and you look at that version manifest file again, I didn't see anything that, without going online and say maybe hitting the GitHub API or something, to be able to easily say, oh, this is of this package type. And I think that might actually answer the question of what do we do with duplicate packages? I think the answer is we do nothing, because technically these are unknown package types. And we won't know, we can't safely really deduplicate them. We might be able to do some deduplication based off of location, but it looks like the vast majority of stuff, minus maybe the binary cataloger, it's not really going to overlap, or is going to be something that we can't assuredly know is a duplicate. So I'll pause there for a second, because there's more. I think there's more here, but does that resonate with folks, or is there anybody have questions on what I just went over too?
I think the duplication thing, I've often thought that we should maybe be more aggressive about deduplicating things. So like, if we add stuff that starts to increase the package count with things that like might potentially be deduplicated in some scenario, but probably aren't going to be, like, that might seem less than ideal to me, just from that aspect.
Yeah. Do we have any file ownership information in here, or can we find any? Because the file ownership, not the version, is really what we use. And I think one thing, like, really, like what Keith said, really resonated with me, except I almost want to get away from the term deduplication and call it merging, where it's like, okay, we found a blob here. Like we have a package, like the binary classifier thinks it's curl at this version. The RPMDB thinks it's curl at this version. This manifest thinks it's curl at this version. And that's all sort of one thing. Those are like really three pieces of evidence about one thing in a sense. So yeah, I think the answer to the question, it's not that we don't know what type it is, because if we don't know, like, a lot of this stuff, it looks like they built a binary and embedded it, right? We have OpenSSL, we have curl, we have Redis. Um,
Right.
and so if we know where it is, we should associate the binary classifier in some way because this has better version information. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we could just leave them both out there for now. The other question is, does GitLab have a vulnerability feed about this embedded stuff? They probably don't, right? Because this isn't really theirs, right? They're just saying like, I found Redis at this commit and built it into this image. They're not. So yeah, because I'm
Yeah.
just wondering like, who do we match against downstream in Grype? Because again, that's just like, okay, we have basically a like semver and a commit from a GitLab mirror, and we don't really know like anything about this. Like, did GitLab patch this after they pulled it in? Did they, you know, it like, so I don't know. I like, it makes sense to get this in, but it's also a frustratingly incomplete manifest of software, is my initial feeling.
I think that brings up a theme. I was kind of waffling on the same kind of thing, which is like, oh well, what's the usefulness in Grype? And the little sub conclusion I got to was, well, I think it's still, from an SBOM use case perspective, still useful to raise up package information with more accurate versions with licensing information that's kind of blessed from the source, even if it's useless downstream for vulnerability scanning. Like maybe one day we find a good way to do it, but I think from an SBOM use case alone, it's I think valuable to raise this kind of info.
Is it worth making, like, rather than wishing this had a package type in it, we could make it be a package type and just say like, this is the package type GitLab manifest entry, which isn't very satisfying, but it says where we got it, why we think it's there.
Well, we have a locations field as for where we get things. So it like the type could convey that, but it doesn't really help in any other way, which is why I kind of leaned away from trying to add a new package type for this. It felt like it's like unknown seemed more accurate. It's like we actually just don't know what it is. So it's like, well, we don't know. We put unknown. So but we don't do that for any other cataloger. But I think this is the first time this has really come up where it's like, hey, we've raised rich information, but we have no idea what ecosystem it might belong in. Some of this touches on the next points too of what you brought up, Will, which is, well, what if the locations for these like overlap with some other package? That's how we tend to think about like package overrides, or this package knows better than other packages. Okay, so one thing I learned about this was, yeah, there's this release file, but the release file is kind of useless because there's actually a Debian package that packages all of this up. If I read this right, like in the container I saw, there's a GitLab-CE Debian package that has all these files owned, which was very nice and convenient, which means there's something we could lean on to in terms of like, oh, we raise up all these unknown packages, and the Debian package claims to own all these as well. It's not like we want to suppress these per se, but that does mean that maybe downstream we can correlate like, oh, this Debian package is, related to all of these other unknown packages without having to do too much work.
I have a question about that. In the sense that, like, when you say this Debian package is related to these unknown packages, but if it's claiming the file ownership, are they not the same thing? Or what's the nuance difference there of saying it's related, but we're not merging?
Yeah, there is no logic for the case I just mentioned. Like we have logic that's all about what you mentioned, which is like, oh, okay, this is when we merge things, or one package will override another package because it's a better, richer type, and we know that the other one is more of a guess. So this would be kind of like a new case where if we're raising up, if a cataloger is raising up a bunch of unknown packages, and then you have another cataloger that raises up a rich package, and there's some ownership information between them, file overlap in between them,
Right.
Instead of suppressing these, and this new pattern would be, oh, I have unknown packages. I want to instead say this contains these, or sorry, I should say this depends on these, or this contains these. One of the two.
Right.
I kind of don't know. I haven't thought through this last part all that much, but it would be a new pattern to answer your question.
Am I correct in that these files this would only be a manifest JSON, which would be owned by a package manager package, but it wouldn't actually point to the files that are installed? Like did I miss something?
There is so the Debian package would, it definitely has a reference to the version manifest.json. And I believe, I'll have to go double check this, it has a reference to all of the embedded packages that it's referencing, like, PCRE, OpenSSL, curl, etc. And so it has both of those. And on top of that, if we decide in this new GitLab cataloger to raise up unknown packages, we would also have locations on there saying, oh, well, I looked at this version manifest. And so the version manifest would be evidence for that, but we wouldn't have as part of that what file, like it's curl, but we don't know where, which curl. And I don't think we should try to guess. we could try to guess, but if it's the GitLab cataloger, maybe GitLab has a nice pattern for it. We can go look, but I haven't done that research. So
what? Trying to back up, because it sounded like we started off with a really concrete proposal, and we're kind of to get this little pull request in, which would be wonderful to do. And I feel like I'm a little out in the weeds. So we have GitLab. It sounds like we're scanning a Docker image that is GitLab, right? And we find at /release just information about what GitLab release it is. We find at /opt/GitLab/manifest.json or whatever it was, we find a manifest of external sources and their license and their commit. And then we also find in the regular Debian installed state database, we find a deb that owns a bunch of files. And that deb is called GitLab, and it owns /release, and it owns /opt GitLab version manifest. Does it own anything else? Does it own?
Yeah.
You say it. You think it owns the curl that we found?
yeah,
It owns all of that stuff in the manifest JSON.
Okay.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
It's a huge Debian file that's got /opt embedded, and it's got curl and config guess and all the other stuff in that manifest JSON. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So then we have file ownership for this, because the deb owns this manifest and owns curl, then we know which curl this manifest means. So then, yeah. So what? It sounds like the proposal is to leave these as unknown package types. Does that mean we're doing pearls with package generic? Is that what we mean? Or
actually, I'd probably just do no pearls. I feel like generic pearls are always useless. So, but I mean,
okay.
I don't know. Actually, some of these URLs actually are GitHub URLs. Maybe we could, because there is a GitHub Perl, and that is useful to know. And
Yeah,
I think some of these manifest entries could make up. It could be its own metadata type in Syft.
Yeah, but what goes in the SBOM under CA certs? It's we found CA certs at this version with this license, but it's not. It doesn't have what's the type? Does it just say unknown?
Yeah, it would say, I think today. So we have an enum already for unknown package. I actually think it says unknown package. Maybe it's a little ugly, but it would say unknown package.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, Alan, this is a huge image with a billion things in it.
Not on this
But-
laptop.
It's on the other laptop, so it doesn't matter. It can run all day.
Ziggy is over there.
Okay.
I mean, so I think I wanted to just put out there the context for all this, but I really wanted to like kind of answer a couple questions, which is like, with all this context, do we think that raising up unknown packages is like a good path to it? Does anybody have any better ideas? That's kind of one question. This other question is, I think we can correlate outside of the cataloger, the D package and all these unknown packages, such that we can say this Debian package depends on these other unknown packages. And it'd be a new pattern for what Chris was asking earlier. I guess this kind of question be, does that sound like a good idea? And I know, Chris, you have your hand raised, so.
Yeah, I have one. I think overall, yes, good idea. But the caveat being that they all are related back to a single like node, which in this case is the GitLab package that we're trying to discover and add into the SBOM. I think adding these kinds of packages are only good in cases where they're evidence or dependencies or in use by something that's like more concrete that isn't unknown, right? So the GitLab thing is in the sense that GitLab is not unknown. It's installed by Debian. It has this manifest of what's describing as its dependencies. We can take Syft and go, hey, we can't describe in detail the kind of dependency tree of this, of things that are being installed, but we can relate them back and we can show the overlap to the Debian DB, right? But if we were like taking this issue from another angle, or like a whole other kind of issue where we're just starting to throw unknown packages into the SBOM based off of like iffy information with nothing to tie it back to, that's kind of where my line is on, do we start adding these or not? So putting that out there.
What do folks think about that?
I'm not sure I completely understood the proposal.
Well, I think Chris was saying raising up unknown packages sounds like a good idea as long as there's like an umbrella parent package that they could be related to that's rich and has real information.
Or that they're related back to the Debian, their Debian like owned files, right? That there's something else in the system that says like, hey, I have ownership over this. We have some like there's a thread for the user to explore there, rather than just us throwing unknown onto anything that we can't describe with no threads that they can kind of follow to find, the organizational structure of the analysis that Syft did.
Okay, so you're saying it's okay in this case to raise up unknown packages because they're owned by something. And in this case, we have declared license data, which is kind of interesting, right? So we have the fact that this license, this CA certs is maybe not the most interesting one, but we have what license this version of GitLab claims to use Redis under, which is, that's an interesting thing that we can surface. So we have it sounds like we have a version and a path and a license and sometimes even some source repository information. That seems like it's worth including in the SBOM and future improvements can make it, so maybe we can try in the future to figure out what kind of a thing this is, or assume it's a binary or something. And then for matching, I guess this will probably fall back to the stock matcher and Grype. I'm always thinking about Grype, but I think that again, I think what Chris is saying makes a lot of sense. Sure.
I like that some of the source URLs are actually just the Git repo. I don't know if you clone that link, if it would give you the exact state. You could use the SHA to find where it was tagged at. Some of them are the tar.gz of the official source code, just zipped up of where they pinned it. But it's interesting how it flips back and forth between how it's distributed.
Yeah.
I was thinking we could do some kind of online behavior, but maybe not with some of the sources.
The more I consider the onlineness, I was like, it looks like any URL can show up here. Is not supposed to being guaranteed a repo URL. They do have that Git key value pair. So I'd say only process Git ones, for instance, and maybe that's
right.
Okay. But I'm thinking for this rev or this cut of the feature, it would be all offline. And if we wanted to do online enhancement, we could in the future.
Yeah. And it looked like a lot of those URLs were GitLab mirroring it themselves. I don't know. Did other people notice that? If we can go
Yeah.
back and look at the URLs for a second.
Yeah,
Scroll
there
down
was
a
a lot of
bit.
mirrors.
Right. It's like they just have a GitLab org called Omnibus Mirror.
There's an
That is,
upstream, the odd upstream one in there. There's a SourceForge link in there.
yeah. It's kind of
GNU.
it's kind of interesting. It looks like, yeah, but the ones that like, because somebody said there's like a GitHub Perl. I don't know if there's a GitLab Perl, but this looks like these are just mirrors. So the upstream source might be nicer. But anyway,
I wonder if that means they're patched. Like, why else would you do this? Well, I guess you'd do it so you got a consistent, like, every time you build, you know that's not going to go away. But, I mean, why would you care less about Gemalloc than this libicon? I mean, okay, GNU's never going anywhere, but I don't know. I don't understand why some are and some aren't.
Same. I don't know what the rhyme or reason is either.
yeah, I mean, it could be like, I know I've worked places where the build server is not allowed to reach out at all. And so if you want source code, you clone it into your organization's Git servers, because you don't trust to do a Git pull over the public internet because somebody could typo squat or like it could be down or whatever. So it could just be like, I think it's a reasonably common practice if you have a hard build dependency to like host the sources yourself.
I think I've got it. There's no
Yeah.
GitHub links anywhere in this manifest. They'll
Yeah.
point to any SourceForge, but not GitHub. That's
I didn't
just a
think about
guess.
that.
Okay.
Just a guess.
Yeah, I see. But I bet that like,
That rhymes.
yeah,
That
that
reasons.
if you right. And so if we look at one of the ones that's a big project that like, I don't know, what's one of the
Something that's
But
big in here.
or
But that's okay. I mean, I think
yeah, anyway. That's it.
Pop
That's
up
you're
the-
probably right.
Yeah.
yeah, probably off the stack some. I think. Okay, so I was definitely interested on like on what the team thought about this direction. It looks like there's some technical details to solve. I can take those offline, but it sounds like everybody's head nodding at the general direction, which is good. That means this is essentially unblocked, and I can kind of move it forward. So, anybody have any other parting thoughts on that or last thoughts on this one? All right. Well, that's all I got for the GitLab one then. So
Sweet.
Just one last thing. I was just looking at the actual container. I'm sorry if I missed this earlier, but there is definitely like rich license information in that subdirectory as well. Like there's other JSON documents and full text licenses and stuff like that. So that is yeah.
that's a good point, because then okay, I'm gonna take a note of that on the PR because that's really good to know.
One really quick question before we move on, which is, are we going to emit a package for GitLab itself?
So there is already a Debian that Debian package is for GitLab-CE.
Right.
So in my head, there's this release file and I don't see a reason to catalog it if there's already a guaranteed Debian package.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is because like, does any matcher know like Debian packages are going to get compared to like Ubuntu and Debian CVEs, like, and like there's no reason for Debian, the organization, to report vulnerabilities in GitLab. And so one of the like little gaps in the ecosystem that I'm always looking for a way to close is like, we are scanning an image and the image itself is the product, right? Like you scan GitLab CE, like if somebody assigns a CVE to GitLab, the image is the thing that's assigned to CVE, not the, and so I think it would be really nice for the cataloger to emit a package that represents GitLab itself, maybe even package type OCI, because that's a Perl type. But I think it would be really cool for the SBOM to have like, because there are lots of things that are really just distributed as an OCI image. Like the OCI image is the product, and I think GitLab is an example. So I think it'd be cool to have that sort of top level package as part of this, because it might be cool downstream to try to say like, this is an SBOM of GitLab CE 1734, or there's CVEs against that edition of GitLab. It might be an interesting question downstream.
There is a issue that's about adding rich package information onto the source, like the source blocks that we have today. And that feels like it falls in there, which is like, okay, I've identified that this package is like the package that represents the thing I was told to scan, which is an OCI image. And then to associate that information with the source package or like subsume it. We never, I don't think that's been designed out, but it sounds like you're talking about something in that camp. I don't have the issue handy though.
Yeah.
I could find it.
And it's an interesting point, Will. I think a different approach here, since there is this rich metadata, like that version manifest contains the version of GitLab CE itself, right? So another option would be to create an artifact in the SBOM by parsing this file for GitLab CE, so that it's not, we don't have to infer it from like the tag name, right? That problem, yeah, there's tricks with that, but this actually has some more information. So if you go all the way to the bottom, build version 15.6.1. So like we might be able to create an artifact that's called GitLab CE version 15.6.1. Here's its Perl and CPE, so that version, so that vuln matching would work.
Yeah, that's exactly the sort of thing I open up, and I more meant that like sometimes you scan a Docker image, like, and you get everything but what everyone calls the image, right? You don't get an actual package that's just called Grafana or whatever.
Yep.
So yeah, I think I would like to see it emit some kind of package. I don't know what Perl or metadata type that represents GitLab itself, because I think that's really useful for downstream scanning.
Cool. Are we done with this topic, or any more?
I don't think I have anything for it. So I'm looking for the other issue. I'll drop it in the chat whenever I find it.
Sweet. So anyone have any other burning questions or issues?
Nothing
we
on
just
my
dive
plate.
into, first of all, our good friend Tim Brown, who has reminded us that
Yes.
now that Grype V6 is out the way, I'm pretty sure we Pinky promised to get back to this issue, this pull request.
I did get to his PR, the suggested fix in Grype, and that got merged, and it's gonna go out in the next release, going out shortly. So, so we got to one of them, but yeah, the next one of them is to get onto this one. Looks like my name's on this one's in the stalled column for me, and that's what I'm now that V6 is over with. I'm slowly going through that stalled column and handling. So
nice. Okay, cool. Thank you. Should we dive into the open issues? Did I? Yeah, there it is. I thought I had the roadmap link. Where do you want to start? Roadmap-y stuff, which is
maybe triage.
Yeah, that's probably the right one. I don't know. Yeah, I should probably put a link to triage in there. So is that this lot?
That's this one. Yep.
Right. Anyone got one they want to dive into, or do you want me to just pick one?
It's that last one. It's a new one.
Mm-hmm. Right, I'll just paste it in the chat. There you go. Allow cancelling tasks that generate SBOMs with Syft create SBOM. So this is someone using Syft as a library by the look of it. Syft create SBOM accepts the Go context the first time when I pass a cancelable context. It's ignored and catalog as tasks continue running nonetheless. high memory usage of Syft in a container as a Kubernetes pod. To bound the I get kill errors to cancel SBOM generation. Interesting.
Yeah. So we have now plumbed down with Syft 1.0 the context. So it's like this poison pill patterns, like it's easily done. And the only part with air quotes around easily is now we need to go to all the catalogers and actually respond to context in those most nested loops. I think it's the only gotcha there.
So this is ready then, right? Because we did plumb it through all the interfaces before we hit the 1.0 mark because we didn't want to be painted into a corner, not able to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's ready to work on. PR's welcome, or we'll try to get to it.
Yeah.
It's the first issue, or this is not really a good first issue, is it?
I mean,
it's a good
for
first.
For individual catalogers, it is, but like for the whole thing to be done, it's not, because it's like you'd have to go to all the catalogers and do something. So
okay,
at least the generic cataloger, so that gets a wide swath of them with that one. But I would also note that I am hoping to parallelize those, which potentially could be a good opportunity to just also add a little something like that.
Gotcha.
Nice.
Yeah, good call on the generic cataloger, because that would get a bunch of them. It would only get it in, for the resolution of for each parser, but like that's a really good start. So
that seems like a good enough granularity to me.
Do we want to give a quick reply? Thank you for the issue. Yes, we accept that is a thing, and we would love to get on that. Maybe we'll have time in amongst another thing. Keith, do you want to bang a quick response? Thank you.
Do we also want to have a very gentle optional inquiry as to why they're getting out of memory errors? It sounds like maybe they're just using Syft in a resource constrained environment, but like we've had occasionally like uncovered real performance problems because users complained about out of memory errors. In fact, I think both times I've really dug into an out of memory error. It resulted in sort of something that was essentially a bug fix. One of them was a read closer not closing in a dependency, and one of them was an unnecessary io dot copy all or io dot read all.
So just ask a simple question about, do you want to clarify, what are you doing? What are you doing that you're working around by doing this?
Yeah, right. Because it's always like, I want Syft to handle more gracefully the system it's on running out of memory is a little bit like, I want Syft not to run out of memory, but with more steps in the request. So it should just a little bit of like, hey.
I'll add some probing questions there.
Excellent. I do love a probe. Right. What's next? Grype error when reading S. I think we've... No. Have we looked at this one before? I don't know. Grype error when reading SBOM for directory and vex document. Unable to find matches. I'll just paste that everywhere. Bop. When running Grype or an SBOM generated by Syft on a local directory using the vex. I thought we had this conversation last week, but
I think we did too. I might have owed a response and didn't. I believe the answer is yet. Actually, I really thought I responded to this one. Apparently, I didn't. But I thought the answer was, we want to be able to glean the embedded vex info from documents without having to have the user go through extra steps. So
yes,
I'll actually respond this time.
We did. Sorry, I think it was a different issue last week, and the only reason that comes to mind is because last week we were talking about embedded in CycloneDX. This one is using vexctl create to create a vex document that is then being passed in. So last week was we committed to putting in the ready column, hey, let's take a look at updating the schema to consume embedded vex. This one is there's potentially a bug with consuming the separate document. So I think it's worth just taking a quick look before we labeled them the same.
Thank you.
No,
Thank
no,
you.
you're totally right. This is totally different. Like vexctl creates OpenVex documents, which is not CycloneDX Vex. So like,
Yeah.
so I did probably respond to the other one. Yes. Okay, good.
Yeah, I think the other one. I think the other one. We have a response, and we put it in the ready column to get picked up soon. This one.
Yeah. There's also thanks, Chris. Sorry, were you done? Okay. There's also a PR in Grype. I'll find it that is addressing like Vex document stuff that's been open forever. And when I rebased it, it just didn't work. And I didn't investigate further, but I'll find that because it might be that like there's already WIP for this in a PR.
Well, that's for CSAF Vex. So it's like adding CSAF Vex, so that different Vex
So
format.
CSAF Vex is a different flavor than OpenVex.
Yes,
Okay,
there's
did the
lots of
spec
flavors.
did the spec move on us with this Vex? Is that what's
Source is
going
not a
on?
field that has moved. So I don't know. So I don't know if like something about this is misaligned.
I have no idea what you said in answer to my question because my internet froze, but you can tell me offline.
Yeah, I don't. So nothing in the spec. I don't think has moved with regard to source. So, but I'm looking around now to see if anything comes to mind. Oh, I think I see the problem. So here, I'll drop this link. I think we just need a much more obvious error here, or actually implement something so it can work. Yeah, so when looking at, if you're trying to actually match up like the source, so like in a Vex document, you need to say what exactly should this match with. So what is this even for? In which case it would be, oh, this particular container image at this digest would be one way to do it, or by tag. And so without a nice addressable thing like that, it's not clear when you should actually match Vex statements up. So in this case, we only supported images because it's very clear how to match those up by tag, by digest, etc. And for everything else, like a directory, it's like, well, do we know that a directory scan should match up? And so like the user in this issue, it looks like they're doing an SBOM scan. And yeah, that's currently not supported. We'd have to figure out how to plumb that source through and how to correctly match it up here.
Right, he's doing the SBOM in the local directory, so there would be no matching source information supported here.
You're right, local directory scan. I missed that. Okay.
All right, yeah. Yeah. I was in a different branch trying to find. That's a good call.
So it sounds like this is a feature request that Vex should work with directory scans. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a needs investigation off of this now.
And maybe a very short-term change of like, put in that error message, like Grype can only correlate Vex documents with packages and images right now, stay tuned, or something, instead of like that, because it's at the end of like a 15 : go error message. It's not really a nice user error message.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, I have a quick proposal, and someone just tell me if this is crazy. In the event of we find the sources directory, and we're being passed a Vex document with no matching source information, should we just trust that the user in this case is a power user, and that the packages they're passing with Vex should be turned off, like the information should be turned off and on in the report, like it can be used as kind of a mask by default? But we can kind of kick the can and say, yeah, we don't know how to attribute source to source information from a Vex document to what a directory scan is. But if we have a directory scan as our source for the SBOM and we have no source information, then just trust the user is trying to use the mask correctly? Or is that too hand wavy?
There's kind of two things. If A, there's source information provided and we don't support it, or B, there is no source information provided. And I feel like if we just like flat out ignore source and we say any whatever's coming from the document should match, then you can get into trouble because you could have like a Vex document that supports, that has statements for multiple sources, and the user might actually, might use that and expect us to be looking at source, and we would start like dropping things when we shouldn't have ever dropped it, or add things in when we never should have added it in. So if source is provided in the statement, we should. It's not called source in the spec.
Right.
But subject. I hope I didn't get that wrong. But then we should try to honor it, and I don't think we should match. And I don't think they're not allowed to provide a subject. So I got to go read the spec again to remember. So.
Well, I'm looking at the OpenVex document he's generating in the issue, and there's no subject or whatever it's called being passed into that creation. Let me try and run that locally and see what it does. If it's just a blank like attribution there. We can go on. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Will.
I was going to say, it looks like it's attached to the issue too, so we could take a very quick look. But anyway.
I got to respond to this one. I might change the title too.
Thank you. Right. We got time. Yes, we've got time for another one. Does anyone want to pick one from somewhere else? Oh, I think there's some we've already triaged in here. This one. I thought we'd already discussed this one. Yes, it's already. It just doesn't have a status though.
I think Tim provided. We were in the middle of P6, so I didn't get a chance to go back. If you scroll to the bottom, I believe he provided a pprof. Great. So like that's the next step, is to go look at that pprof.
Nice.
So. Yeah.
So this is ready then, right? Somebody can somebody can go try to understand it. It's ready to do stuff too. It might not be ready to finish, but okay.
Yeah. So I'm gonna jump in at this point. It was this and a couple of other issues that led me to make something on a weekend, and I wrote a blog about it just this week. It's called SBOM VM. And the idea of this is a lot of the issues that we see are people running Syft inside a VM, and the VM is very constrained, and Syft blows up because consumes all the RAM inside the machine and then explodes. And so I, as a prototype, made this thing called SBOM VM, which is a Python script that you run outside the VM, and it doesn't have to be running. And you point it at the disk image, and it mounts the disk image read-only and then does a Syft from the outside and makes the SBOM on the outside. So then you have all the resources of the host machine, and you don't explode on the inside of the container, the inside of the VM. I did it just as a kind of prototype, and I was bored on a weekend, but it's there if people want to try it. There's a little video somewhere down here showing how it works. There are test images that you can test it against, and there's a little script that generates those test images, so you don't have to clone them. It'll just generate them off of various containers, and once that's done, you can just run SBOM VM, and it will figure out what the partition types are, mount the root file system, and then scan the file system. It's not perfect. It's making a lot of assumptions, and it's just a prototype. But it's, open source. It's on my Git repo. And if anyone wants to have a play with it, they can clone it and have a play with it. So, sorry for...
No, that's awesome. There's
Carry on.
Well, also put an issue in the chat that's related to this. So there's something that we've always wanted to do. Just haven't had the time to go off and do it. So there's a issue 3245 that's catalog the images directly. We did some research it, and there's this one awesome GitHub user, Masahiro 331. So he's implemented these three, I think maybe a few more libs for accessing EBS images, extended for and XFS, which is which would be very common for a lot of the use cases in mind such that we, and without CGO and without having to shell out to anything, be able to look at some of these formats. I think it'd be very interesting to do this. So that could be like the next level up in terms of like, so like if level 1 is the tool you just wrote for like mounting them, because that's very tangible for folks. And like for anyone who's trying to do that, like that tool existing is super useful. So thanks for doing that.
Thanks.
The next step is like, man, can we like get this into Syft via using these libs directly as file resolvers? That would be awesome. So
yeah, I think that's partly where I came to, is like Syft can't do this on its own yet. So let's figure, in the meantime, I can't build this in Syft, but what I can do is throw together a crummy shell, Python script that can do it. And it's also limited because it's running on the host. It assumes it's Linux, and so it uses like Linux utilities to, whereas this would be cross-platform in theory, I guess, and you'd be able, not that, I'm not judging that some people use other operating systems, like, whatever he says from a Mac. Right, excellent. So we don't really have anything to say about this other than it's ready, and do we want to put that in ready?
Sounds good.
Sweet.
It's got all the details we need.
Right, we've got 10 minutes. Does anyone want to pick a 10-minute one that looks like it's going to take 10 minutes to discuss? There you go. Support Fedora Core OS 36. I think we've mentioned this before, but it doesn't have a status. Why can I not post in the chat? Because I'm pressing the wrong button, that's why. I think we briefly, we briefly talked about this some other time. Yes, we have. And you did a little bit of digging. And there's a Vunnel PR for adding a Fedora provider. Is that a PR? Oh, no, it's just an issue.
I thought we weren't sure where there's a nice vulnerability feed for Fedora. Like, is that a true statement? Like, we would love to build a Fedora Vunnel provider this week, and we don't know what URL to point it at. I feel like that's a true statement.
That's horrible. Sorry. I think that's where we came to last time we talked about this, but
yeah, I think so too. I think there's also like in terms of like the cataloging on the SIP side, something to do with OS tree, RPM OS tree that also might be unsolved. So this one's definitely needs investigation.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was like ready, and then like then I wasn't certain. So
when you mention the OS tree stuff, is that where stuff gets relocated in like sysroot, and you get a bunch of files with seemingly random UUID file names and trying to pick those apart?
Yeah, but I feel like every time I learn about like RPM OS tree, I like unlearn it like 5 minutes after I walk away. So yeah, not certain. I have to load that back up again, and hence the needs investigation. So, but I think you're right. Yes,
we might get some progress on that side of things, because I've been talking to the Universal Blue people who are behind such cool projects as Bazite. There they are, these people, and they use like container primitives and principles to create desktop images that people can put on their laptop and their gaming device. And I've been chatting to these people about adding support for generating SBOMs. And if you point it at the final image, then you come across that problem where you find there's a whole bunch of random files in sysroot, and they're all like this bubble wrap flat pack stuff that does deduplication and all kinds of stuff to try and shrink the image down because they're enormous. And that kind of obfuscates the original package names and stuff. So you lose some of the metadata along the way. So I've been talking to them about that, and more on that another time, no doubt. But yeah, it's rather cool. Sorry to divert you away from that.
Are they coming through with like a bring the metadata along kind of?
So they've
in the
got
future?
I don't know where it'll be in it. There's a somewhere in here. Is it that one? Yeah, they've got like workflows that they reuse across all their projects, and they're trying to add to their projects in order to run Syft. And we figured out you need to run Syft a little bit earlier. You know, that whole shift left thing, you know, it's not wrong.
Because it's kind of interesting. I just noticed like the minus like ELF cataloger, and like was Fedora is one of the few distros that's like actually baking in all the, you know, all packaging information, well, as much packaging information as they can into each binary that's being shipped. So that's why. But I mean, it doesn't help if you don't have a binary per se, and it doesn't help for other kinds of files. And so I could see it's still lossy.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, but we shall see. We're working on that and trying to help them, you know, figure out the rough edges and corners. But you know, they're building off of packages that come from Fedora, so you know, this might be interesting to them as well. But yeah, I don't
that's
know.
awesome.
I don't know if there is a reliable feed. But that's the same answer we had last time, unfortunately. Yeah. So do we have like anything we could do here, or is this you know, it's just on the backlog and we'll get to it when we get to it?
I think we're looking at we want to be looking at one over. This is just the bundle issue.
Sorry, this one.
Oh yeah, so we'll get to it when we get to it. It's basically need to learn first and before knowing what to do. So
well, and I think it's one, like a lot of Grype requests, it's really two steps, right? Teach Syft to find all the right packages, and teach Grype and teach Bundle to fetch all the right vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So it still needs investigation anyway. Okay. Right, we've got 2 minutes. I don't think we should start another one.
I think that's it. Yeah.
With 2 minutes left. Any final comments? We've had we know people running the latest version of Grype, and they've reported, I guess that's where this came from.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah. So that was actually two things. So like one thing was, hey, like the you know, we have a proxy rule, and so I made certain to point out like, hey, we've migrated the URLs. The databases have been where like at this new URL for about 6 months now, but it's the listing file that is now finally also moved over to that. So folks got impacted by that. But then the other thing is we did find one regression where like you used to be able to have a listing file that was like locally on your file system and point Grype at it, and it would work just fine. And that stopped working. So that's the next release of Grype. I'll probably go ahead and cut that pretty short, pretty soon. Has a fix for that in place. So
sweet, awesome. But the previous version is still available, and we're still publishing V5 schema databases anyway. So you can carry on.
And we'll keep. Yeah, and we'll keep publishing V5 databases for a year or two. So we're good to go.
Sweet. Okay. Thanks, chaps. If you have any questions, you know where to go. Jump on our discourse, or jump on GitHub and send us issues if you have problems with any of these tools, and maybe we'll talk about it next time. Thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your week, and see you all next time. Cheerio.
Thanks, everyone.
Ta-da.
Take care.